to the Technical Staff and Theatre Workers podcast. It's the podcast in which I talk to people who work backstage in the technical theatre industry about how they got in, their experiences, and any advice they can give to anyone getting in. This is episode 2 of season 3. A big thank you to everyone who's downloaded the show, everyone who's listening to the show. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know who's interested in theatre and those who aren't interested in theatre, because it might make them interested in theatre. Yes, thank you so much for all the downloads. It's been really good so far, so really enjoying it. And without further ado, let's get on to our next guest. And with my guest at this time, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell me what your current job title is.
Yeah, hi Bram. My name is Nick Egan, and I am currently stage manager on the Book of Mormon.
Excellent. And how did you get into theatre?
Many years ago. I am from New Zealand, and in my secondary school I got involved in theatre when I was about 15, and moved straight away pretty much into professional as quickly as I could.
In New Zealand? In
New Zealand, yes. So I'm from Christchurch, New Zealand. We moved up, my family moved up for my secondary school, so when I was 13, moved up to Auckland, and my school had a fantastic theatre. So I was very lucky, as most people are, I think, when they break into this business. Yes. It tends to be a certain amount of luck, I think, which goes along with things. So my first day was on set building. They decided to get me in to build the set as part of the team, and they gave me a team to work with, and I thought, okay, well, let's just crack on with it. And we were in the workshop and built a few bits and pieces, and at the end of the day, the teacher sort of went, well, that's what we normally do over the course of about 2 months. I'd managed to get a team of people together to do a lot of building, and he then spoke to the director, who turned around and said, well, actually, how about you do the stage? How about you stage manage this show? So I moved straight into stage management at that point with absolutely no knowledge or experience.
Oh, well, we all do that kind of thing, don't we?
Yeah.
Did you do any training, or was it from there on?
It was from there on, really. So through my high school, so I had another 3 years of high school, and as I said, we had great theatre at the school, so I just literally became the resident stage manager for that theatre. We had a lot of external hires, we had a lot of TV that used to come in, and small one-off shows, short runs, comedy, all sorts of bits and pieces that were in the theatre. So I just learnt on the job. I just put myself up for everything and anything that was coming through, and just worked on that. And and that was sort of like an apprenticeship, really.
Right.
So when I finished secondary school, in New Zealand at that time there was no formal training for stage management, which is what I wanted to go further with. So I looked at doing a communications degree, thinking, well, perhaps I'll go into media, radio, TV, or something like that. And within the first 3 months of me doing that degree at Auckland University, I was also working in rep at Auckland University Theatre, the Maidment Theatre. They had sort of got their hooks in with me at that point.
Right.
And so I'd done about 5 shows in rep, about 3 months into my degree, so I hadn't had a lot of time for my degree, and I was doing a load-in overnight for a show called Hot Shoe Shuffle, just to make money, so I was doing electrics load-in.
Yeah.
I was about an hour into my electrics load-in and cut my finger, and thought, I better go and get a plaster for this, so I went down to the stage management office to ask for a plaster, started waffling with the stage manager, as stage managers tend to do, and they said to me, we don't have any our ASM, they've pulled out, they can't do it. Would you like to be ASM for the show? And I was like, well, I'll have to leave university, and I need something a bit more than just a 6-week run to justify that. And they said, well, we'll pay for you to come to Australia, and we'll give you a contract in Australia for the run that was in Sydney. So, I called my mum and said, right, I'm leaving university. I'm going as a professional stage manager, and I'm moving to Australia. So it was one of those fun conversations. But that was it. That was sort of like my lucky break as such. I did have experience before then, but that was my first professional gig. And so that was in Auckland, then in Sydney, and then I lived and worked in Australia for 7 years.
Fantastic. So that leads me to my next question, which is your first job, paid job, which was that show, Hot Shoe Shuffle.
It was, yeah. I always think of that as my first professional gig. Yeah. I had done quite a lot before that because obviously sort of an apprenticeship style training. I latched myself onto anybody who would take me.
Right, yes.
So I did quite a lot of corporate work. I did a lot of gigs, did some concerts, sort of quite big concerts as well, and did quite a few shows, some of which were dubious.
Excellent.
As we all do. So, that was the first professional.
Give us a list of other jobs that you've had? You don't have to do them all because there's probably a lot. But
there was quite a few. So that was in 95 was my first professional then. I did Me and My Girl, Miss Saigon, Crazy for You. I worked on Phantom for a bit. I did a bit of Les Mis when I was in Australia. I did the Sydney Olympics. I did the tour, the original production of Boy from Oz and the Australian tour for that. I did My Fair Lady. I've actually done My Fair Lady 3 times. Right. So when I came over here to the UK in 2001, my first gig was Five Guys Named Mo, and that was a national tour. And then I moved into the West End and did My Fair Lady for the third time. Right, okay. I did that at Drury Lane. I stayed at Drury Lane, did Anything Goes. I then DSM'd in Producers. Moved off and did Wicked, which I opened as DSM, then moved into Jersey Boys. That was a long run for me. I did almost 10 years on Jersey Boys, so that was something, a whole different world, doing 10 years on one show. I then moved off Jersey Boys, went to Motown, and then sort of started breaking it up a little bit and did a few CSM jobs. Ended up doing the Les Mis concert at the Gielgud, the original Les Mis concert, which was a bit of a dream come true for me to do that job. I really, really enjoyed that. It was a great one. And then, pretty much ended up here.
Excellent.
Here we are, 2 years later on Book of Mormon.
Wow. So going back to earlier, what prompted you to move to the UK?
Whilst the work is incredibly satisfying in Australia, and there's some great bodies of work that come out of Australia. I mean, Boy from Oz was an extraordinary production, and it was a full-size musical. They aren't as common, so shows run a lot shorter runs.
Right.
There is still a lot of very, very talented technical staff and technicians in Australia, so the competition to get onto a show is very, very hard. So if you don't land on a show, and especially for me, I like large musicals. That's my thing. I like some automation if I possibly can have it. So if I didn't find myself on one of the larger shows in Australia, it was often a long time between drinks.
Right. Okay.
So I would have to really... It started getting at that stage as well, where I'd been working for 7 years, 8 years. I wanted more consistency out of my work.
Of course.
I was also very lucky that my mother's Irish, so I have an Irish passport.
Right, okay.
My sister called me and said, I am leaving the UK in 6 months. She was living over here. And she said, if you want to come, you need to come now. If you want to sleep on my sofa. And I was like, okay, that sounds like a good motivator. So within 4 weeks of me getting that phone call, I was on a plane coming over here.
Excellent.
And then slept on her sofa for 3 or 4 months and then went off on tour. So.
Oh, lovely. What would you say was your favourite job that you've had?
That's a tough one. I feel very lucky with my career. I have had some amazing, amazing jobs. Hot Shoe Shuffle, the first show I did, was a tap dance show, absolutely extraordinary. Opening The Producers was really quite spectacular. That was we had some issues in rehearsals for that. We had a cast member who we ended up having to who left the show right when we were halfway through teching the show.
Right.
So we were very concerned. And then obviously we found out, Nathan Lane's coming in. We had Nathan Lane, Lee Evans. We had an extraordinary cast, and the satisfaction of opening a show like that, to the applaud that we had for that show. It was so successful. It was an incredibly brilliant piece of work. And I got to work with Mel Brooks. That was nice. And we sold out Drury Lane for the first year, and that was really quite a remarkable one. There's been a few other highlights as well. Opening Wicked was really quite cool, and also Jersey Boys. That was great. I got to go and learn the show over in the States, and that was my transition from being a DSM to a stage manager. But it was quite for me at the time, it was the perfect transition because I was stage manager on the book, so I got to call through the rehearsal period. I was on the book.
Right, I see.
I opened the show on the book and then handed over to my DSM once the show was open. So throughout that whole run of Jersey Boys, I was still calling that show, maybe once a month, once every few months. But it allowed me to have that transition from being a DSM to a stage manager.
Excellent. So being from New Zealand, obviously coming to London from a different country, have you ever come across any issues, people holding you back? You feel that people have not given you a fair crack at jobs or anything because you're from a different country?
No, I've never found that. I've never found any sort of... People tend to like people coming from New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah.
We all have a very similar work ethic here, I think. Never had a problem with that. Which
Good.
Is,
excellent.
Great.
What would you say are the pros and cons of working in this industry?
There's a lot of pros. I think to successfully have a career in this business, you need to be passionate about it. I think you really need to have something more than just I would like to do this. It has to be almost a desire to work. And
we've said before, it's very much a lifestyle rather than a job choice.
Yes, it is. So I've always felt very lucky that I've been able to have a life working in theatre, working as a stage manager. The pros is great job satisfaction. We every night you hear applause. When the show's running well, it's a great feeling. We have lovely company. There's always nice people to work with. We play with some fantastic toys. We've got great sets. We have all sorts of things to keep us entertained and occupied. I love the product. I love listening to musicals. I love plays. I love the theatre as a craft.
It's great. It's an escapism, isn't it?
It really is.
People desperately need. We masturbate people's emotions, and I think a lot of people need that, especially in times, these times when it's very difficult for some people. Just to have that hour and a half, 2 hours of escapism, or 3 hours of escapism, I think is really needed. Yeah, especially when mental health is a big issue for.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and I think that's something which is particularly with musicals and musical comedy. We always see that in these times when people are finding things challenging, musical comedy seems to kind of be that escapism that people are looking for. They know they can just switch off, and they can come and actually have pure joy and be thoroughly entertained. So to be part of that, there's nothing quite like that. I know that certainly a lot of my friends who work in the real world, whilst they have satisfying jobs, and they probably make a lot more money than me, and there are other things that they have, their job satisfaction. It's not often that people can get the same level of joy as that we do from our work. I also quite like stress, which is a weird thing. So I'm in a good job for that, because at times there is a lot of stress here as well, and on any job. And sometimes I quite enjoy that, which is good. The cons, well, it's probably the same thing that everybody says, working 6-day week.
Hours.
The hours, yeah. I have a family. I've got my wife and 2 daughters. So to try and work out how to have enough time with them to feel like I'm still part of the family and contributing the right amount to the family, it's a challenge.
And you have an allotment as well, which is,
I do have a
lot of hours. It's very challenging. I know that.
Yeah, I know. And there is often the argument of, well, if you're not at home with us, why are you in the allotment? Yeah. However, one of the pros that we have with working in theatre is that we don't have to work during the day quite often.
Absolutely.
So that's the perfect time to go on the allotment or go fishing or to have many hobbies. And I have lots of hobbies, and that's nice. I do have the time during the day for that. It's just in the evenings and the weekends. So for me, a lot of my career, especially in the last, I would say, 10 years since we've had our children, I have made decisions about the jobs that I do. My family life weighs a lot more on the decision-making process of what I'd like to do. So Jersey Boys, for example, it was very important for me to carry on that show, because during the course of that show, we'd just bought our first house.
Yes, stability is
stability was everything. We had my 2 daughters were born whilst I was doing that show, so that was one of the reasons why I stayed on that show for a long time. That show, to start with, didn't do Sundays. Then it moved to Sundays, so it was quite nice to transition from that onto a show which then had the Sundays off. Yeah. And with a young family, working nights and weekends, there's not really too much of a problem.
But when they start going to school,
as soon as they start school, it's a really difficult challenge. So I'll often find myself now, I live in Brighton, so I have a fair commute. So I tend to have to leave to get for my show call. I have to leave at 3:30 from home to get here for 5:30. I will meet the kids after school, and even if it's only for 10 or 15 minutes, to get them and to see them after school and just get them home and have those little moments. They're really, really important, because I miss out on a lot of the evenings.
Excellent. Obviously not excellent, but excellent. Excellent answer. What would you say is a common misconception from anybody who's trying to get into the industry? So what do they think it is that it's not?
I think perhaps people might think it's slightly more glamorous than it is.
Yes, glamour is
I think that people think that there's a lot of glamour. I think people would probably expect that we would get more credit. And I think you have to find that in yourself in this business. Yeah. I think, we, as a manager, it's good for us to support others and to encourage and to give positive feedback and praise, but we don't spend our whole lives with people telling us we're doing a great job.
No, absolutely.
We just get on with it.
It's very often a thankless job.
It is. And it's really hard work. There is a lot of times when it's very, very hard work and it's very stressful. And as I said earlier, I quite like stress. That's good for me. A lot of people think that this is a job which is very understanding, very accommodating.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly stressful job. You need to be made of very strong stuff to make it through a tech period, to make it through a rehearsal period, to run a show for a long time and keep on the ball with it. There is a lot of focus and concentration. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's an easy job. So I think a lot of people may often look at it and go, "Oh, that looks like a lot of fun."
Yes,
especially
if they look into an established show where it can be a little bit more relaxed backstage because it's established.
Yeah,
they don't know what's gone into getting it to that point.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes the people look in and go, "Oh, I like that. The people are having a laugh, they're enjoying themselves, having a bit of fun," but they don't understand the hard work that's gone into it beforehand.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, there's a lot of work that goes on around the edges just to keep it all ticking along. But some of that work isn't easy, and I think you have to be the right sort of person, I think, to work well in this business.
Excellent. Saying that, what advice could you give to anybody who's trying to get in?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Advice. I would say persevere. It's not always going to be handed to you. A lot of it is about luck, as we mentioned earlier. That's when the breaks happen, is usually through something which is luck. You need to be prepared to be. You need to be adaptable. You're not always going to get the job you want. You need to be able to sort of turn on a dime and perhaps work in a different style of theatre than you thought you might want to. I love musical theatre. I love West End shows. Sometimes I might have to go off and do something for a short run, or I might do work on a play. You need to be able to be adaptable, and your preconceived ideas aren't necessarily going to be your career path. I would say, as a more stage management focused thing, I would say don't rush. There's plenty of time to learn. If you're going to make a career out of stage management, it's a career, it's a lifestyle, it's a lifetime of work.
Yeah.
You don't need to, in your first 2 years in a career, move from being an ASM to a DSM. There is no prize for being the first person to be, or the youngest person to be in a role.
Yeah.
You're much better to spend the time learning your craft and working out what suits you best at that time of your life. I know people who are career ASMs, and they might show call, they might have done stage managing as a stage manager. They may like all sorts of different elements, but they come back to being an ASM because they like that place, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful thing for people to take their time coming through the business. It can be very difficult to go backwards. So once you've stepped from being an ASM to being a DSM, you may not want to go back to being an ASM. You might miss an opportunity because you might have got tours. You might have spent more time learning your craft rather than sort of sitting in a role and then going, "Oh, I can't get any more DSM jobs, but I don't want to go backwards." And then very much the same as the transition from being a DSM to a stage manager. They're very, very different jobs. You have to be prepared that it's going to change. Your entire career path will change when you move from DSM to stage manager. Don't rush it.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Make sure you've done everything you want to.
And make sure it's what you want.
Exactly. There isn't a prize. There is no top job. We are all stage managers. We just do different parts of the job. We all have different skill bases.
Yeah.
Some people are more suited for show calling. Some people are more suited for ASMs and they ASMing, and they love props and they like working in the wings. Some people are very, very well suited for stage managing. Some people are very suited for company managing. It's a great department. It's a great craft. There's so much to know in each of those fields. You don't have to specialise early.
Yeah.
And as I say, just take your time. Don't rush it.
Perfect. Lovely. And that's everything I've got for you. So thank you for joining me.
Lovely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. A big thank you to Nick for that. A very interesting perspective of somebody who is obviously not from Britain, coming to Britain to get a job in this industry. It's quite interesting to hear how sought after it is to get over to this country and how big theatre still is in this country. It's great to hear that. Thank you so much for listening to this. Thank you so much for downloading it. It's been really great, really loving it so far, and long may it continue. Thank you to all the guests that have been on, and I shall see you all next week.